Good morning. My printer's going in the background, so I'm going to talk a little loud in this video. Today we're going to talk about masks. It is 2022, and unfortunately the pandemic is still blazing at full glory, and I live in a city of 10 million people called Los Angeles, so masks are a very important part of our lives. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. I'm going to be making a new one. It's going to be super cool. I think you're going to like it. Stay tuned on this episode of Make and Believe. Okay, so before we dive into the new mask, let's talk about what I've done historically. Starting before the pandemic, just doing woodworking and working with particulate matter that I don't want to breathe in here in my shop. I've had a respirator. This one is by 3M. There are a lot of good companies making a lot of good respirators out there, so find the one you like best. And when you're doing something like heavy painting, especially in not a well-ventilated area, when you're doing something like sanding and you don't want to breathe in those wood particles, wear a real respirator. These filters here are interchangeable. You can pop them out when they're dirty, buy new ones, pop them in. It's super easy. It's a really tight fit. The rubber seal here is very flexible. This will fit any face, and it's got a lot of tightening strap options to make sure that this is really secure to your face. I love this respirator. I will never get rid of this respirator. This is my shop respirator. That being said, when I'm doing lighter work, where it's not like, life or death particulate matter, I will use one of these in my shop, doing hand sanding projects, things like that, where I am kicking up dust, but I'm not making such a mess that I really need to protect myself, or working with like mold or something crazy. Back to this respirator, actually, again. This has a valve in the front, so you are able to breathe directly out and release so that it doesn't build up too much moisture on the inside. This, of course, is just a filter throughout with a couple of straps on the side. It doesn't get much more basic or bare bones than this. So that's what I do when I'm working in the shop. When I am outside, this is pandemic stuff, social distancing. Usually when I'm riding my bicycle, and I'm like probably 10 to 15 to 20 feet away from people most of the time, but I may roll up to a stoplight and have to wait, and somebody may roll up next to me, and half the time those people are not wearing a mask and they're breathing really heavily. So I wear a mask when I'm riding my bike. I like to wear this one. It's this origami style KN95 mask. And it folds up over your nose. It's got a metal piece on the inside that makes it a nice tight fit. And it also has this little origami flap that tucks underneath your chin. My wife wears this too, and she'll twist it around her ears so that it's extra tight for her, but these masks fit my face perfectly. From time to time, I will also use a decorative mask to double mask. This one is from the Highland Park Independent Film Festival. If you were ever in Los Angeles at the right time of year, I highly recommend that you check it out. In 2021, we went, and they actually did it outdoors as a drive-in and projected it on the side of a building, and I thought that was great. And they gave away masks as a part of their little gift bags. We were in the VIP section. It was super cool. Definitely hope they're doing it again that way this year, because if so, we're going. So sometimes I will double mask. When I'm going into a grocery store, or if I'm going to an enclosed space with other people, I step my level game up a bit, and I use one of these masks that is 3 pieces. I've got a video on when I produced these en masse for nurses at the very start of the pandemic, when masks were in short supply. This pops off, this case, and you can change out the filters on the inside, and pops back on again. It's a pretty good fit. All 3 of these pieces, there's a piece on the inside. Here's the 3rd piece that pops in to hold your filter in place from the back, and then you've got the main bulk mask piece, and then you've got the cap piece. I also use a piece of rubber weather stripping along the back edge that I glue into place, and that makes a really nice seal and a really comfortable fit for wearing this for long periods of time. Some elastic, this is good to go. If you don't have a 3D printer, you probably have a makerspace in your area where they can print this for you. This mask was designed by a gentleman at the USC Keck School of Medicine, and the files were released for free for anybody to use. I highly recommend printing this mask if you want something, you know, super industrial strength protection style mask. And I love it. I've been wearing this one, and then another one, based on the same design, just I printed this in wood PLA for the bulk of 2020 and 2021. It's getting to the point now where I want a new mask, and I want something of this quality. When you pop these caps off, this one didn't fit as well, so I put some little hot glue tacks just to keep the cap from falling off. But if you pop that cap and take a look on the inside, I've got 5 layers of 0.3 micron protection layered up between the cap and the back plate to breathe through. And breathing isn't difficult through those 5 layers at all. And instead of wasting N95 material at the outset of the pandemic, what I quickly learned is that CPAP filters for breathing, for people who have breathing issues and need to keep particulate matter out of their lungs, especially when they sleep at night, those masks have been making 0.3 micron filters to go with them for years, and they fit really well in this with just a tiny trim on the edge. So I use 5 layers of that inside, and this has been working like a dream for me. I printed a couple of these for my wife. I have a couple for myself. They come in different sizes. I believe that now they have a small, medium, large, and I've even made an extra large version I've got around here somewhere that I occasionally use in the shop when I don't feel like using the rest of my formal respirator. So I'm going to go for something like that in the new design, but I kind of want to make it cool. You know, it's 2022, I'm tired of these boring old masks. I want to look sweet. I want people to be like, hey, where'd you get that mask? That's custom and awesome. So let's talk about that next. So instead of reinventing the wheel, I popped onto Thingiverse, my favorite website, and I looked around for masks, and I found straight away one. I'd always wanted to do like a samurai mask anyway, like kind of for cosplay purposes, but I found a really cool COVID-19 style samurai mask by a designer named Mr. Munoz 2616, and I will link to that file in the description below. Cool designer. He's also got one that's like Sub-Zero inspired from Mortal Kombat. Pretty neat stuff. But I really liked this samurai mask. It's a half mask. It's in the Oni style. And here is the first print. It's a little bit difficult to see all the details because I printed it in black PLA, but I mean, it came out really nicely. This mask is in 2 pieces. This is the basic part with internal threading here, and then it has a screw-in part, is the second piece that has some air, you know, input holes, and you put your filters in between the 2 and screw that in place. And it's got 4 holes around the outside so that you can set up your elastic. This is a really cool design. I like this a lot. However, my face is not flat, and it looks like it's going to fit me head on, but from the side, like there's no way I'm going to make an airtight seal, even with my rubber weather stripping technique that I do for my masks. It's just not going to work for me because my face isn't that flat. I've got a big old honkin' nose, and this is not right for my face. So what I did was, this is 1:1:1 dimensions, X, Y, and Z. I just wanted to print it, see how it would fit, and what I might need to change to make it fit my face better. And what I ended up doing is printing it 1:1 to 1.5. 1.5. This prints laying flat, and it prints beautifully, by the way. I did do it with support, so you know that's great. But it printed just flawlessly, and I made the Z-axis, the up and down axis, 1.5, and I kept the X and Y axes at 1. And this fits my face much better once I popped this support off. I'm very happy with this. I'm definitely still going to add the rubber stripping on the inside to get a nice seal, especially around my chin area and around the nose area up top. It is going to stick out a little bit from my face on the sides, at the back where the elastic band straps fit, but up here where my face actually touches it on the inside edge, that rubber stripping it looks to me like it's going to provide a really nice clean seal. This is a really well designed mask. So if you're looking for a COVID-19 mask in the samurai style, I would highly recommend this one by Mr. Munoz 2616. Check it out on Thingiverse. So the next thing I'm going to do is sand this up. I'm going to paint it. I'm going to do quite a bit of painting work. I'm going to make this look as kind of historically accurate as possible. I've been doing some art research online to take a look at how people have done these masks traditionally in the past, and I want to do something cool with the elastic strap too. I don't just want to do thin ones like I've been doing in my past masks. I have a vision of having a thick band. I'm not sure how I'm going to do the attachments yet, so this is going to be a journey, but this is where we are going. This is the base template mask that we're going to be working with. I am printing the screw-in piece now, and I think I might print a couple of those in different colors so that I can change them out and, you know, add different accents. Yeah, this is going to be fun. Here we go. Okay, so after working with the print a little bit, I've noticed some things that I didn't notice before, which are totally fine. It is not as airtight as I thought it would be. This is probably not going to come out on camera at all, but where the respirator part meets the mask part, this is a remix. This is a part created from 2 separate pieces, actually 3 separate pieces that the designer very cleverly put together. Maybe you can see it from the back. Like a little tiny bit of light leaking in around the edges. It's okay, this happens all the time. When you're combining 2 things, especially in Blender or similar software, sometimes the software, when it's trying to combine those models, leaves a tiny bit of an air gap between the 2 of them. It's really well seated in there. It's joined really solidly, so it's not coming out. But there is a bit of a gap just in spots where it meets at the back. It's totally fine. What I'm going to do so that I don't corrupt the beautiful detail work on the front of this model is go in with my 3D pen around the edges of where the respirator ring hits in the back and make sure I have a tight seal. I'm going to do the same thing at the bottom of the plate behind the nose and at the top of the plate behind the nose. And actually, I might use hot glue here, especially because there's a little bit of a divot that might need to be filled. As you can see, it's very cleverly done, the way that they did this mask before it was COVID, you know, they made COVID-proof. The nose actually has space up underneath, and then there is a plate behind it, which this designer may have also added, actually, when he put the respirator in to make it, you know, more of a COVID-proof mask. At any rate, there's just a little tiny air gap back there that I want to fill. I think hot glue is going to be the right solution because I can pour it in easily, let it fill up the hole, and then I can easily cut it and take it back out again. I think I'm going to use the 3D pen down here just to grab these little spots because I can file it and sand it, and I'll use some black PLA so it'll blend in like nothing ever happened, and then we'll move on from there. So another thing I noticed when I got the plug to print out, now this is still the 1:1:1 size mask. I'm cleaning them both up because this is going to fit somebody even if it doesn't fit my face. And so I printed a plug for that too. I started to clean up the threads, which, you know, never print perfectly in the first place. And I've gotten to the point now with a little bit of playing back and forth where it's starting to thread nicely. It did take some work, and it took some trimming with my my tiny scissors to clean up some of the loose PLA, you know, the kind of printed wrong in there in the first place. But now it's getting to the point where it's good. The only issue I'm having at this point with that is that on the front, the way to grab it is on this really thin edge, and my fat fingers are just having a really hard time holding onto that edge without cutting them when it starts to get tight. You could use the air holes, which I've done once, use a screwdriver and kind of turn it that way, but then you lose your straightness of your threading, I should say. The angle that the plug goes in is important. You don't want to pop over a thread or break it. It is PLA plastic after all. So you want to screw, you don't want to push. So there are 2 options here. One, I could design and build a screwing tool that grabs into all 4 of these sockets and turns it and keep the file the same. Or I could just design an addition for the front, which is what I think I'm going to do. That's going to be my solution that I'm going to glue onto the plug. That also gives me an option for even more color detail work, and it'll be something that my fat fingers can grab and hold onto and do the twisting, turning motion instead of trying to grab onto that super fine edge. So yeah, I'm going to do the filling work where I've found holes. I'm going to continue to sand these pieces until they are ready for paint. And then I'm going to make my adapter bits for the plug, and then I should have all my pieces ready to start painting. Okay, so I have sealed the back. I decided to just go ahead and use hot glue for all of these seams because it's just so easy to smooth with your finger while it's still in that transition phase, while it's cooling down and it's not fully solid yet. So that's what I did, and it was also easier to get it back up in this little divot zone. None of the hot glue came out the front, so I've basically sealed my seams without messing up the front structure. The next step I did was to sand and clean up my plug and screw it in, just to see how it would fit and what it would look like once it was in. And then I took some painter's tape and I cut it up into tiny pieces, and I started to cover up the insides of the nostrils and the open space in the mouth. As you can see, you've got fangs here, then you've got teeth here at the top, and a little fang and teeth at the bottom on both sides, and then some dark empty space behind that. Now we want that to be solid so that this is a good COVID mask, but I also want it to remain black when I start to apply paint to this. So I've taped it over so that the PLA, the black PLA, will be the color that we see when we finally take that tape off in the unmasking phase of putting this mask together in the end. So for the front part here, for the plug, it is still a little difficult to turn with my fat fingers and this thin edge. So what I've done is I cut in Blender. I cut off one of these fangs here, and I resized the fang, and I duplicated it and flipped it around, and I created a fang plate for these two little miniature fangs to be attached to, and I printed this out. And it is just a tiny bit wider than the plug, which is perfect, so it will actually mask that. And my plan, so I plan to paint this in the same color scheme that I do the rest of the mask, but I'm not actually going to glue it onto the plug until the very final step, because I want to make sure that it's lined up properly after I've got my, my PPE filtration system fully engaged. I want those fangs to look just right. So that's going to be on hold for attachment until paint is done. So I've got this taped up now, and I'm ready for the first coat of paint. I'm going to start with white. I have got a nice heirloom white satin spray here to start with. I actually bought this for my wife to use in her office, and she hasn't used it in like 6 months, so I'm using it, and if I need to buy more, so be it. But we're going to get this base coat on. I want to make sure everything starts out white, and then I think what I'm going to do is keep the fangs and the teeth as white as I can. Might even whiten them in a different color than this. And then I'm going to go with a green for the rest of the mask, for the face itself. I've seen a lot of these Oni masks in green. I've seen a lot of them in red. I think both would look pretty cool. I might actually end up printing another one at some point and making it the other color, but I'm going to try to go with green for now. I'm also going to see if I can make a little bit of glow-in-the-dark happen here. I've got this glow-in-the-dark green paint that I've had for ages. I've used blue before to pretty good effect with the Diavol's Raven Staff video. You should check that out. It's from way back in the day. I made a raven skull staff, and I painted the skull itself first base coat white again, and then in the blue glow in the dark, and it does glow in the dark, and it has glowed in the dark for years. It sits next to a lamp and absorbs all those photons and then shines as soon as that room gets dark. I think it's super cool, and I think this mask will benefit from that same effect. I also have this stained glass green, which is supposed to be translucent, so semi-see-through. The photons should semi-permeate this top coat, and I think between the two of these I can achieve the effect that I'm going for here on top of a base coat of white. We use this for Hela's horns as kind of a top coat on top of that, and it did come out a bit translucent. Hela's horns were black, they started black, and then they got some accent paint, and then they had this on top, so there was a lot of different paint layers bleeding through into each other and creating an intricate, cool look. You should check that video out too. My wife looks stunning in it, as she always does. Anyway, so that's the plan for paint for this mask. I'm going to start with my base coat and move on from there. Okay, it's a brand new day here at the shop. I have given my mask its base coat of white, and I let it dry overnight. I also painted the plug, and you know what? It's coming out pretty well. I think, actually, with white, as opposed to black, the details of this mask really pop. It's quite pretty. Very cool mask. At any rate, next step is to start adding the base coats of the glow-in-the-dark green underneath the stained glass green finish. So I'm going to actually start, this comes out kind of white, or at least if it's anything like the blue that I used for the Diavol Raven Skull Staff, it will come out white. And in fact, let me grab that and let's take a look at it. Okay, so here we have Diaval's Raven Staff, and as you can see, it is overall like a bone white. There's like a tinge of blue to it, but it really does look white to the eye, especially during the daytime. It really looks like bone, and I'm hoping I can achieve the same effect here for the fangs and for the teeth. So I'm going to leave them untaped when I apply this glow-in-the-dark green, and I'm going to hopefully... This took several coats to build up the right texturing in different layers until it achieved this kind of finish. So I'm anticipating the same will be needed to get this mask to the same quality. But yeah, that's what I'm going for, is kind of a bone color with a hint of green all over the whole mask. And at that point, I will probably tape up the teeth and the fangs in order to put the top coat of the stained glass green over the rest of the face and see how that comes out. All right, glow-in-the-dark paint is now giving me that bone look and feel, and I think I'm ready to move on to the next stage here. I did also start to do some sample test painting on this front piece. I'm going to keep the fangs here again in the glow-in-the-dark, like bone green paint, and then I like a gold ring, and this actually I should have taped up before I painted it. And I may run another one of these and tape it up and then redo the fang work. But I really want it to be black. I should have done it the same way that I did the taping off here, so the black PLA is what's shown through at the end. I may go back on this, and I may go back on that, actually. I've got still some of this Mousseau black that I'm using for my Mark 15 Stealth Iron Man helmet in another build. To come soon. Check that one out when it drops, because it's amazing. So I've got a little bit of this left that I might use to go in and redo the black with a brush, and that would really make it look like negative space, which is what I'm trying to create here. We'll see, but the gold came out pretty well. I'm probably going to end up doing gold all the way around this ring here, but that's going to be the very final touch after I do this next translucent stained glass green layer on the rest of the face. So the next step for me is to tape off now the fangs, so that they stay this bone glow-in-the-dark green, and then to apply the stained glass green on the rest of the mask and see how that comes out. Okay, a good deal of tedious taping later. I believe my fangs are pretty well covered. My teeth are pretty well covered, so I'm going to go ahead and apply the stained glass, which is supposed to be semi-translucent green paint. And the hope here, I don't know if this is going to work or not, but the hope is that the glow-in-the-dark paint that I've already applied to the face will still be able to receive and then transmit some light through this translucent green paint. It will just pick up the color of the green and be slightly different than the fang color, and slightly more colored in, more a darker hue. So that's the goal. Who knows if it'll work or not. If we end up with an actually green mask and then just glowing fangs, that's also going to be cool. So it's really a win-win situation, no matter how we look at it here. But yeah, I'm going to apply the stained glass finish next, and we will see how this comes out. Wow. I love how this turned out. This is like Chinese jade. This is like the same color I painted my room as a teenager. The same room I drew a big dragon on the wall. Yeah, this is amazing. I really like how this green came out, and I really wonder, because it is kind of translucent. It's kind of opaque, but it's kind of I just wonder if it's translucent enough for photons to penetrate it and to absorb into that glow-in-the-dark paint underneath and then glow out. If it does glow, it's definitely going to be a different glow than the bare glow-in-the-dark paint. At any rate, I think it's time to unwrap this and unmask and see the fangs against the green, and to see the black PLA beyond that, and then to start coloring the gold around the main respirator ring here. This is going to be so cool. Let's do it. Okay, we are really getting there. Was the masking perfect? No. Was it pretty good? Yeah. Better than probably I've done in quite a long time, actually. Masking is very difficult to do without having paint leak through somewhere
it's not supposed to be, or having the masking cover an area that it's not really supposed to cover in places. And you know what? This is all around. This is a pretty decent masking and paint job. I'm pleased. I have the respirator cap is drying right now. The next steps here are to put the CPAP material to cut it into shape and to start building up my layers on the inside, then to screw in my respirator cap again. Once that part is finished, I'm going to turn my attention to the back of the mask, where I'm going to do my rubber insulation strips, the weather stripping, to make a nice, comfortable, and airtight fit against my face. And then we'll move on to the straps and how to hold this onto my head. This is super cool. I'm really stoked about how this project is coming out. Right, so here's what that CPAP filter material looks like. It comes in a rectangular shape. It's made to fit the socket of a CPAP machine. But it was perfect to cut my circles out of. I've got 5 layers of this material in here. So as you can see, the air comes in through these 4 slits, has to pass through all 5 layers before it gets anywhere close to my mouth and nose. This is going to be great protection. Okay, so this is the rubber weather stripping I was talking about earlier. It has a strip of tape on the back, and when you peel it back, it has its own adhesive. It is made to adhere to doors and windows to make your home airtight. I'm not a big fan of that adhesive, to be honest with you. It's okay for getting it mocked up, which I've done here. I've cut the strip that I wanted and laid it into place where I want it so that it forms a good seal around my nose and my mouth. And I've tested it with my glasses up here to make sure that it's not fogging my glasses up, because that is the number one sign of a bad seal, is when your glasses fog up. And I'm pretty happy with the way this turned out. It's relatively comfortable. I may actually do another layer of rubber around this once I have this set, just for comfort, to be honest. And I might even do a little tiny bit of foam padding on the nose. You see the tip of my nose here. Before I sanded this down and got it nice and smooth, it actually did cut me. That's the problem with unfinished PLA, right? It's not skin friendly. At any rate, so what I'm going to do now that I have this mocked up, I'm going to go back and I'm going to take it up. I'm going to run a bead of super glue where I want it to stick so that it really adheres well, put it back down on again, and then I'm going to go around on the inside edge and I'm going to run a bead of hot glue so that this is just permanently tacked and that there are no air gaps in between my rubber seal and the mask itself, so that once the rubber seal compresses against my face, I can be confident of an airtight seal, and that the only way that air is getting in and out of this mask is through the respirator as designed. Okay, so good news, it does glow in the dark. Not just the fangs, but the green mask itself. So that stained glass spray paint actually is translucent. That's just freaking amazing. I will try to show you that later in this video when everything is all put together. But for finishing touches, I've gone ahead and painted the back gold, the same gold as the plug in the front. I just thought it looked a little nicer and cleaner than leaving it unfinished. I have attached my rubber sealing. I'm going to do another layer of rubber stripping around this just to give it a little bit more of a comfort factor, and I might do some padding strips on the side. We will see, because once I put the elastic part together, it's going to start pulling back on my face. I don't know. We'll see how that fits. Oh my goodness. So for the very front, I went ahead and colored everything in gold because I didn't like the way that the black looked, and you know what? I still don't like it. So I printed another one and I taped it up, and I'm gonna leave the black this time, and I'm just gonna do the gold on the ring, and I'm going to make the fangs white first, obviously, and then the glow in the dark green like I did with the other fangs to match. Hopefully that'll come out better. We shall see. Okay, I have done the doubling of the rubber seal in the back. It is a much better fit now. A lot more comfortable too. I'm not even sure I need any extra additional padding besides this, but we'll see once I get the elastic strap on the back and I can put it on and test fit it for real. And on the front, much better. Yes. Looking pretty cool there with that plug cap. I dig it. All right, cool. So the next steps are the elastic strap to finalize this project. I popped over to the Joann for some curbside pickup action, and I got 3-inch elastic strap. It's going to be fantastic. You can just see the proportion of the width there to the side is almost perfect. I also got these gold eyelets, pretty cool. And a eyelet punch tool came along with them, so that's great. However, I've never used eyelets before, so I just tried to use them in the elastic strap, and it worked a little bit, but not that well. So I think what I'm going to probably do is use pieces of leather folded over and sewn to the elastic, and then put the eyelets through the leather. And the plan eventually is to get the eyelets relatively lined up with the mounting holes and then run something between them. So the stretch will come in the elastic, and this will be a loose connection but a limited tautness, like it won't actually flex from the eyelet to the hole. That's the plan anyway. I might change that as I go, as I often do, but yeah, time to move on to fitting this thing to my face.
Okay, so over the course of the last few evenings, I have been working on the mask project little by little during the entertainment hour that we have after dinner each night. And I've gone ahead and picked out some leather scraps from my wife's scrap pile. She has an extensive collection. It's amazing. I love it for times like this. And I've cut them to size. I've mounted the gold eyelets in them. That punch tool worked great. And then I hand sewed with some thick white thread, embroidery thread, some stitching along the side to secure. There is glue gluing the leather to the elastic, but I didn't want to count on that, especially for this is a mask that I'm going to be wearing out, and if it breaks, I could potentially expose myself to risk. So I reinforced it with some embroidery thread. I think it worked out pretty well. I'm not the best at sewing, as you can tell. Tiffany suggested that I use a sewing machine, but you know what? I really wanted that handcrafted look for this, and I thought a sewing machine would be actually too straight. So some of the error here is mildly intentional because I know my own limits. And I like the white actually kind of matches during the daytime hours, the fangs, so everything's still within the same color story. I have added brown here with the leather, but I actually think that goes really well, and it gives it a natural and somewhat authentic look. So to join the mask, I was originally going to use hemp rope, and I thought that might tie in the natural and the brown elements from the leather, but I thought brown on brown, that's not what I want. So I went back to green and used some green paracord, and I did a loop tie on the eyelet, brought both strands through, and tied them off on the front to give this effect. To hold these together after they were tied. I didn't want it to be permanent in case I needed to adjust this in the future, so what I did was use a tiny bit of shrink wrap, and I cut little sections of shrink wrap, slid it over, much like a shoelace would look at the end. I did singe the tips of the paracord so that to prevent against fraying. Paracord is actually, it's plastic, it's polypropylene, so it actually melts down pretty well. See if the camera will pick that up. And it kind of looks like the end of a shoelace at this point. And then I applied some heat to the heat shrink to cinch each one of these points down, and I think it actually came out pretty well all around. So let's pop this on and take a look. Yeah, it's actually really, really comfortable fit. It looks really cool. We can do the glasses test. I'm not getting any fogging on the inside of my glasses, which is awesome. That means we've got an airtight seal around the top and no air is escaping upwards. It does feel a little loose at the bottom. So I think what I'm gonna do, I had done the double layer of, the double layer of rubber sealing on the inside, and I think I might actually add one more layer to make it a triple layer, and that will make it super comfortable and super padded and a really nice seal on my face. But other than that, I think this mask is pretty much done, so I'm going to charge it up in some sunlight, and we will show you how the glow-in-the-dark looks, because that is pretty cool too.
Okay, I have given this mask about an hour to charge in the sun. It's, not fully as bright as it's ever going to be, but it's probably enough to see the glow-in-the-dark features. So let's do it. Let's dim the lights and see how this thing looks. This is how it looks again in the light. Maybe too much light. And here's how it looks in the dark. This was such a cool project. I'm really stoked about the way that this came out. All of the things you need to build this mask are very inexpensive. Joann Fabrics has most of them ready for you to pick up, curbside even. This is a very friendly, COVID-friendly build. If you like this and you want to try it out, check out the link in the description below to the file that you could print at home or have printed at a makerspace. All of the pieces that I used to build this will be linked in the description. I hope you enjoyed this build, and I will see you next time on Make and Believe.